Welcome to this episode of B2B Marketers on a Mission, and I'm your host, Christian Klepp. Today, I'll be talking to Jessica Deckinger. She's a senior executive with diverse and extensive experience across integrated brand marketing, product, digital strategy, insights and analytics, finance, and operations. She's valued as a strategic thinker with proven ability to lead cross-functional teams, develop talent, and influence team members at all levels of the organization. She's also known for performing with a balance of financially based business thinking, exceptional creative vision, and ability to adapt quickly to any team in a fast-paced working environment. Tune in to find out more about what this B2B marketer's mission is. Jessica Deckinger, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks, Christian. I really appreciate you having me on as a guest.
Fantastic. So let's just hop right into it, because this is a topic I think that is not only pertinent to B2B marketers, specifically in the SaaS space, but to their sales counterparts as well. And so what am I talking about here, folks? I'm talking about how video uplevels every part of the customer journey. So Jessica, why don't we kick off the conversation with this question? What do you think is still holding a lot of B2B SaaS companies back from producing videos?
Thank you so much. I mean, a great place to start. Look, I think video feels like this really big, scary thing to a lot of folks. You feel like you have to be specialized and be, Steven Spielberg and be able to do incredible, powerful things, yourself as a creator to be able to tackle video. I think many people feel that acutely. They kind of feel intimidated by the source of like, how am I going to do something that really breaks through, feels brand worthy, feels beautiful, and how can I make a good video? So that's definitely something holding people back. I think the other part is really just that it's always been very painful to produce video. And I know that anyone who's a B2B marketer, salesperson, commercial person in this area is going to resonate with that. It has always been super painful. You had to produce and hire a crew, and it was expensive. It took too long. And then honestly, by the time you got everyone's opinions, everyone wanted to comment on the blue back screen and the way someone tilted their head and whatever you did in the video itself. It always winds up being that once you put it out there, it's already outdated, right? Like it just feels unwieldy or felt unwieldy to this point. And that, I think those are the two biggest pain points that have kept people back from really taking advantage of what's one of the most powerful ways to communicate.
Absolutely. Having produced a couple of videos myself in my career, I can truly relate to that, and how, it can be a painful logistics exercise. I'm not going to lie.
And expensive.
And to your point, it's this constant pressure that it has to be this Hollywood-style produced video, right? Like you said, Steven Spielberg or James Cameron's going to show up and direct it, right? But that probably begs another question. Does it have to be that style of video?
I mean, I think one of the wonderful things about the time we're in now technologically is that it doesn't have to be that now. It really doesn't. I think there's so many creator tools. I'm a board member of a company called Sunday Sky. I think they do a spectacular job of enabling not just static creation process, but also personalization at scale, like really taking video, making it easy to produce, easy to make it look really high quality, easy to customize and personalize, and then spread and scale effectively in real time so that you can take advantage of this incredible medium and not feel restrained by that creative process, the production process. There is so much out there now that enables that to happen. I think there's also value in thinking about the personalization side, right? Like really nobody wants, unless they're going to, logging on to Netflix and watching a film that was produced for mass audience. They're not expecting something that's mass when you're marketing, right? No one wants mass that way. I mean, in essence, also, even when you get onto something like Netflix, it's personalized in a way because you're getting content, hopefully, that's more towards your liking. But the level of expectation around personalization has ramped up so dramatically. And so I think the software, the capabilities we have now to do that, to execute on that, have made it much more accessible for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. The technology aspect of it is really an important or a key component, right? And we're going to touch on that later on in the conversation. But I'm going to segue us on to the next point, which is, again, on this topic of producing videos for the different stages of the customer journey. What are some of the pitfalls that you think B2B marketers should avoid, and what should they be doing instead?
I mean, I think one of the biggest pitfalls is thinking about, like trying to make video solve all the problems. I think you have to think about where you add the most value with video, thinking about onboarding, acquisition, where are the most painful parts of your journey, customer experience, where are the parts that you're feeling the most pain, and then laser focusing on those so that it becomes a really pragmatic, exercise, and you're not kind of like just trying to blanket do everything for everyone all the time. You can with the technology that's available now, but really thinking about where is the biggest pain in your acquisition, onboarding experience journey, and then using video as a tool to enable better experience there. Because frankly, I think, there's a ton of data around this. Like one of the things I think is really interesting is that if you think about kind of how our human brain works, video is processed. There was a study that showed that it was processed 64,000 times faster and had a 90% plus recall when you see something in video versus read something in text or hear something in audio. And, I think that is a really powerful stat. And when you think about your most painful pain point, bringing something up the curve that quickly with both the processing capability of the end user and the retention of the end user, there's a potential to make really big leaps and bounds and have really big ROI on fixing that process first. And so I think that's a pitfall that people do fall into, is they try to fix everything at once. But the potential to really fix the most painful thing and bring it so far up the curve is pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely, absolutely. You just reminded me of a project I was involved with a couple of years ago where, well, let's just, for lack of a better description, the client tried to cram every piece of information into 2 minutes, right? And at the end,
Look, I
yeah,
think that's a common problem. I
it
don't
is.
think that's a pain point just for you.
No, no, no. I think it's a recurring trend. And I
Yeah,
think the objective, to your point, the objective of the exercise is people, this is not meant to be an instruction manual, right?
right.
Um, Try to think of this, and there might be a different analogy. This is just the one I like to use. Just think of this like a teaser trailer. Have you ever watched a teaser trailer that was 5 minutes long?
I mean, there's a reason
Right?
for that, right?
Yep.
Because you can hook people very quickly.
Mm,
And I think the to get back to our first point about what's holding people back, there's something about the capacity to create bite-sized pieces of information. And frankly, I think it's important now. Millennials are the biggest buyers of everything coming up next in the queue, whether it's software or services or products. And they're in the prime of their careers, right? And they're thinking about bite-sized content because they are more digitally native. They have been fed bite-sized content and know the value of it and appreciate the value of their time and want to be, respected and not kind of like expected, to your point, read an entire brochure of content or watch an entire brochure of content in one video. And I think the platforms that are available now enable us to create, as marketers, as commercial people, those bite-sized chunks, because we can do it more efficiently. And it's not going to be this huge production that we talked about at the beginning of the conversation.
absolutely, absolutely. You just made me think of another question, and it's really on this topic of having a teaser trailer rather than a 5 minute short film. How do you deal with that kind of pushback? Because I'm sure you've dealt with this before, where folks want to produce a video and they just want to cram everything under the sky into that 2 or 3 minutes. How do you go to these people and say, hey, listen, let's not do
I
that?
mean, it's hard.
Right?
You tapped on a good point, which is that everybody has opinions about creative. I always joke as a marketer that the two most painful things are people have comments on words and colors,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't
Oh,
like the blue. It reminds me of my childhood bathroom, or that word evokes, a bad feeling for me. And it's always interesting as a marketer to navigate that. And I joke about that, but it is representative of a larger thing, which is that when you're creating a piece of creative content, there are going to be lots of opinions. One of the ways to combat that is this kind of thinking about empowering your team with efficiency, operational efficiency tools that allow you to create things at scale, because you can kind of make everybody happy that way, right? You can create multiple pieces of content rapidly. AI enables that more than ever. Being able to rapidly iterate so that, like, even if you do wind up having a hard time fighting, but pushing back on the massive content, direction, you can both create a large piece of content and slice it and dice it to make everybody happy. And so I think the software that's enabling video creation at scale and personalization at scale, like Sunday Sky that I mentioned earlier, I think those are the kinds of things that will create empowerment with marketers that we've never had before. I mean, it is doing it now. I use that tool. I think there are many tools out there, but it's great to have that level of empowerment yourself as a decision maker in that role, because it is really hard when you feel at the mercy of someone's, opinion weighing in on a piece of creative content that's going to hold you back from getting your job done. That feels frustrating, I think, to a lot of folks.
Yeah, yeah. We used
You're smiling. I
yeah.
hope it's not that frustrating to you.
No. It's it's just evoking these memories of everybody's a copywriter, everyone's a creative director, and then the old decision by committee and opinionitis
Yes.
cases,
Yes.
right? So, but yeah, no, you brought up such a good point, and I totally agree with that. I think to a certain extent, and we can jam on this a little bit further later on in the conversation, that technology might help to break the tie, so called, right? To give people what they want, but also in a way that's relevant first and foremost to the customer at the different stages of the journey, right? Because I've learned this the hard way, that getting internal consensus is one thing, but then if you put it out into the market and it flops, then that internal consensus means nothing.
Right. And you lose trust if that happens too sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think having the analytics around the performance of the assets is critical, and the capability to test and fast fail is critical. And that, like, trying to do it old school where you're producing with a large, that Spielberg style good production,
Yes.
I think actually hinders your ability to build trust and credibility in your own organization. Because if you do produce something and it's really expensive and time consuming and you put it out there and it flops, where do you go from there? So you're kind of like shooting the moon every time you want to make something, versus being able to kind of fast fail and iterate and A/B test. Hey, let's test this with this audience and this with that audience and see how it performs, and having analytics around it, which is another critical reason. You have to have a tool that will give you analytics. Like, I think you have to have a way to measure now. I'm sure you're seeing this too. Everyone wants to measure everything. And for people in brand awareness building, this is like the most agonizing thing, because some brand awareness things are hard to measure, but not less valuable. And I think being able to kind of, as technology evolves and allows us to measure more things, the easier it will be for us to navigate when we're talking with folks and stakeholders who want to measure everything.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You brought up some of this already in the past couple of minutes, but how do you deal with internal pushback, like say from senior management who doesn't know much about producing a video, and because they don't know much about it, they don't think that this should be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I call it video readiness. Like, I think there's a degree to which people are video ready or not. I think there are kind of three ways to address that. When folks are not video ready yet, they're like, I don't really believe it. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't understand it. I think you have to start with data and fact. I mean, the fact that 90% retention was a neuroscience research piece. Like, there is data to show how powerful video can be. I think there's some data to show how powerful video has been for other companies. And I think, that's a great starting point. I think the second part is thinking about presenting how you're going to get it done efficiently is a great barrier breaker. One of the biggest fears, I think, was that first thing we touched on, which is, oh my God, is this going to cost me $1 million? And even if you've told me it's going to work, how is it going to get done? I think creating a believer is about having the data, showing the process, and then talking about the potential result is the third part, which is, when you think about the part of the journey you're trying to influence, looking at what's out there in the market and showing how you can rise above the noise, perform above competitors, show up with more personalization, create stickier customers. All of that is in support of the why it matters, how you're going to do it, right? Then it's what it's going to deliver. And I don't think you have to be wild and say, oh, we're going to acquire at a 50% higher rate or whatever. But I do think setting the bar for what we should expect to see and measure and be able to show out of this is pretty important. And that has worked really well for me with pushback. That kind of 3-pillar approach, I mean, frankly, helps with almost anything, because I think that's how many minds work, is they want to understand the why, the how, and the what. And I think those 3 questions, if you can answer them, it tends to push people towards being a believer, or at least suspension of disbelief, which is part of the what you need to get moving forward. And I think if someone is like dead set that it's not going to work, that's a much harder nut to crack, obviously.
Just judging from the answer you've been giving in the past couple of minutes, you've clearly had this conversation with someone before.
I mean, I think
Hmm.
we all have,
Yes,
not just about video, but about
indeed,
anything.
indeed,
And I think
indeed.
as you grow in your career, learning about managing up, managing, horizontally, managing down are all parts of that growth. And if you're lucky, and I've been fortunate to have very talented, qualified, thoughtful leaders that I've worked under, you see that and you can echo it, because those behaviors and thinking about being calm, logical, in your approach to getting buy-in. And hopefully we're all lucky enough to see that, do as I do, not as I say. But I've been fortunate. So I practice what I preach in that area as well, just trying to kind of like not get defensive when someone's coming at me, pushing back hard on something. I think video is one of those things I've been
Hmm.
pushed back on many times. So I've learned,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
Absolutely. Let me just quickly recap that because I think it's worth repeating for the benefit of the audience. So you were talking about having the data, showing the process, and if you don't have the results already, show how you are going to get the results and what the results are going to be. Am I
that's
right?
right.
Yeah. I'm going to move us on to the next question. So basically, from your professional experience, how can video directly and positively impact the customer journey? And if you can provide examples where relevant, that'd be great. So for three parts, right? So for purchasing, onboarding and usage, and renewal and growth. And I'm happy to repeat.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, the biggest things are thinking about purchase, right? You have to tell a story that's going to differentiate and share more about your whatever it is you're trying to influence purchase for. And if you think about static content, right, not just what I said earlier around like video being more engaging, but I think it gives you the capacity to tell a really meaningful portion of your story really effectively through multiple mediums. So, you can kind of incorporate all different kinds of learning styles in that purchase decision. When I go out there, I don't love static ads. I don't learn by reading. I learn by human interaction. Like I'm that kind of learner. And look, I think one of the great things about the world we live in now is that we recognize there are many different learning styles. There are people who are auditory learners, visual learners, people who are human interaction learners. There are people who learn when they say it. And I think, having all of the mediums you can incorporate into video enable that decision to be much more effective, because you can really get the message across to multiple audiences or multiple types of learners in your audience really effectively. That's the first thing. And then the second one, can you repeat the second parts of the question?
Yeah, absolutely. The second part of the question is about onboarding and usage.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
big one,
Yeah.
which is, I think that, look, technology is accelerating. The amount of things we have to know in a day is accelerating. Think about how many passwords you have to know in a day. And I know there are tools to keep these things, but really the amount of process, the amount of technical savvy, the amount of information we have to process, enable, and put into use in a day is more. So when you're getting someone to onboard onto your service, software, technology, physical product, consumer product, name your thing, financial services instrument, you as the owner and seller of that good service, whatever it is, have more burden because you have to enable learning in a deeper, more sticky way. Well, we just talked about 90+% retention using video. I think the fact that you can, and we talked about the learning styles, the fact that you can teach people in a way they can understand and help them retain better is really powerful. And I think it's a miss not to be leveraging video in an onboarding solution. I just had this happen. Actually, I bought a new phone and I got sent I got like, think about the IKEA version of this, right? I got a 5-page instruction manual with the phone. I was like, I'm not reading this. It feels like IKEA. I'm not gonna be able to put this together. Like, I'm not gonna be able to do this. That's not how I learn, right? So I went on YouTube and watched a video, and it was very powerful for me because I was able to kind of like, oh, I get it. Now I see where the thing is, and I get them set up in the button and the thing. And that was a user created video. But I think if companies can harness that power, we're all teaching ourselves more this way now, right? Like, look at younger generations. This is how they learn. This is how they evolve and grow. And I think, it's a really potentially impactful platform to be able to personalize a video to the person using data, explaining the thing in a way that they can understand their own learning style, and that'll be sticky and create retention. So to me, it's a really powerful customer onboarding tool video.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then the third part was renewal and growth.
I mean, nowadays, if you're not talking to me as your customer and letting me know how valuable I am, me, Jessica, I'm not going to be loyal to you. I'm going to be loyal to the next best thing. I think customers have to feel valued and have to feel individually valued now in order to give you the right to keep them. Like it is a right to be kept by a customer these days because there are many, many options in every single category you can think of. And it's not just about the quality of your product, it's about the experience of the customer. And again, to that teaching thing, when you're onboarding someone, the keeping them tied in is about recognizing how valuable they are, making them feel seen. I'm seeing this more with smaller startup brands where they're doing this, where you kind of like you buy something, they send you a note from the CEO to you. Like, I think it's really nice. It's hard to scale unless you have a software solution. If you're a larger organization, when you have like 5 people and you're a startup, it's easier to do when you're a Kickstarter or something. But I think that's where the software part comes into play, is that you can scale personalization, can scale that retention capability. It's just so critical now to retaining your customers.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to go back to something you said it was talking about you were talking about learning on YouTube, right? Like rather than reading this very long instruction manual for your new phone, you went on YouTube to look something up. And I mean, that one in itself, I think, is living proof of the power of leveraging video as opposed to the written word. And I'm not saying, and I shouldn't be saying this as a copywriter, but but I'm not saying that the written word is not useful, right? Because all videos have started as a script at some point, right? But the point here is the attention span, the time, and the speed with which to convey and dispense that information, right? I mean, it's another great example is I think a couple of months ago I had a problem with my garage door, like it just wouldn't close, right? It's
Oh
one of those
God.
remote controls, where you push the button, it comes
Yeah.
down,
And you're like, this is not working. It's not going to work.
and it keeps bouncing back up. And that's not a great problem to have in the middle of winter, right? And as you said, I went through the instruction manual, and that thing is like 50 pages, 50, 70 pages. And I'm like, oh boy. So we looked it up on YouTube, right? So there's a 2-minute video of how to fix it. And it was something about like loosening a screw in the mechanism that sits on the roof of the garage. And before you know it, it was fixed. Right. So
I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing and
right?
life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it was that was something that you brought up in the onboarding and usage stage. So I thought, yeah, absolutely agree that's one of my many benefits of video.
And ultimately, I think like there is something also about the fact that you just said something very real, which is that we all have human experience. And even in
Yeah.
B2B world, this is
Yeah.
true now, which is recognizing that it's not just that a user, be they B2C or B2B, is a human at the end of the day. Everything is B to H, right? So even if it's business to committee, it's business to human, right? There are a bunch of humans there. And nobody wants dehumanized, unilateral, one size fits all experience in any part of the journey anymore, because we're all humans and we recognize that. And so I think there's also like something about you as a customer of this company, like not wanting to call and get like press 1 for blah, 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 press 2 for like that is a dehumanizing experience. You have been taken and fed to a machine and it feels dehumanizing. And I think that is a larger sign of you wanted to feel like a person, have someone tell you how to do it, figure it out, feel good, resolve your problem, right? And that's all true in the way that customers in any setting, in any kind of type of customer is expecting to be addressed. And written word, like you said, is valuable. It's not valuable. Look, websites still convert people, emails still convert buyers. There's lots of different tools in the arsenal. I just think that there's a power and a special value in video in the part of engaging the human part of the experience, the emotional response you have to something when it feels like it's for you, when it feels like it solves a pain point, even if it's a pain point about a garage door, right? There's something that feels really good about solving your pain.
Oh,
Like it
yeah.
feels a relief.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as opposed to like what you just said, just calling up the customer support hotline and waiting in the queue for half an hour or
I
45
mean, it's
minutes.
horrible. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
Everyone's been there. Your wait time will be 22 minutes. You're like,
Yes.
oh my God, that's 22 minutes I can't get back of my life.
And then when you finally get to talk to an actual person, they don't know how to solve the problem and they refer you to somebody else. So you end up like having an hour of your life wasted
I
that you'll never get
mean,
back, right?
you bring up a really good point
Mm,
also, which is that as a customer experience, as a customer success tool, when you are a company, you should prove that you know your customers better by a certain point of the journey
absolutely.
and know their pain better by a certain point of the journey. So I'm sure that you are not the first person to experience this pain point. And there's something great about being able to gather those data points and then use video to solve those data points about pain in a way that's scalable, which like if you call that person may not have answered that question before, but if you have the content in your repository about that problem and can push it forward, that's really powerful too, right? Because then you can basically operationalize and streamline the efficiency of your customer service experience and your customer success experience, because there's shared problems and shared solutions out there.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, you brought up such a good point earlier on the topic of technology. And I mean, this is a podcast in 2024, so I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't ask you this question. But AI and video, right? Do these two go together and why?
I think sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Hmm.
And I'll give you a couple examples. So I think AI as an enabler of the creation process, meaning like AI as an enabler of editing, suggesting new ideas, bringing creative thinking, kind of being like a co pilot person with you doing the thing is great. Updating and editing imagery that might take you hours to edit, suggesting new creative executions that you could add into the process. Like, I think as a partner in crime, AI is amazing. As that's great. As a replacement for humans, I don't think it's so great. Like, I think it's a support lift mechanism, not a replacement mechanism. And it's funny. The other day I watched a segment about Eric Yuan, who's the CEO of Zoom, saying that AI is going to replace us in meetings, humans. Like you just have an avatar replacing you in meetings. I know you're like making this. So immediately I was like, well, that sounds like great not to have to go to meetings anymore. But also I'm like, do I want to replace myself in meetings? I actually do find meetings, sometimes they're not valuable if I'm just sitting on a screen, but if I'm actually engaging with another human, I find that really valuable. And I think the other place, so when I think about AI avatars, like companies that have gone that direction where you replace a person with a machine, to me, it feels a little bit not helpful and counterintuitive because of what we just talked about, right? Like you call that phone number and you get press 1 for blah, blah, blah. Like taking away the humanity, the personalization in video, to me feels counter to what I'd want, because I don't want a machine telling me something in a different medium. That doesn't help me. Like I don't, just as much as I don't want the machine telling me what to do when I pick up the phone, I don't want them telling me that on the screen. And I think it's not sophisticated enough yet to be able to not tell the difference. Like I think it's hard to replace the people element, but to scale the people element is amazing. So to me, the scale part, the thinking about the response, the data analysis off of the video performance, the creation, co-piloting of the creation of the process, like those are all tools we should be leveraging now and are really productive in getting us to do more, better,
Mm,
faster,
mm.
more personalized, all the right
Yeah,
things.
absolutely, absolutely. I think the description you used is really, really appropriate. I mean, you said co-pilot, so it's somebody like your wingman or wingwoman. Make it a bit more balanced. Um, and I totally agree with that. I think there's a time and place for AI, but this notion of like completely replacing what we're doing now with artificial intelligence or machine learning, yeah. I mean, not even far fetched, but like to your point, do we really want that? I mean, like I can share an experience with you that I've had here. You call any bank in Canada, right, and they will put you into this loop where you have to press 1 for this and press 2 for that. But now they've introduced AI, and they will introduce themselves as, "Hello, I am this bank's AI. What are you looking for today?" "Oh, I want to check my account." I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Please repeat. And it just creates, I think, even more frustration in a situation where the customer is already calling under some
with a
kind of,
problem.
yes, exactly.
You're under duress
Under
and it's
duress.
aggravating you more.
And it's aggravating you more. So by the time you actually talk to a human, you're just pissed off. Right? Like,
And I think that the thing is, I actually think it will get there to the point where it's that sophisticated that you could, if it's large language model based things.
yes.
But the big but is what you just said. I think like some chatbots now, AI chatbots have gotten really pretty refined. If the large language model is like sophisticated enough and it's closed loop and it's interesting, but it's not, I think a lot of it's not there yet. And so a lot of hallucinations, you get AI that does weird things. You get AI that tells you something, nothing to do with what you said, and you make the problem worse. So I think, look, I said this the other day, we were talking about this with someone else, and I was saying this, like being leading edge is great. Being bleeding edge is a little dangerous, especially when you're talking about, you're addressing customers' pain and there's risk there that you'll like what we just talked about earlier with retaining your customers. They have to feel valued. If you make them more upset when they're under duress, you're not going to solve that problem, right? You're going to make a bigger problem. So to me, it's really thinking about ways to co-pilot and create more better, but with the end goal of scaling the humans to create better experience, scaling personalization to create better experience. That's the way you use AI right now. I don't know where it's going to land. No one can predict.
Nobody knows.
But I think right now that's where it is.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be there for a while because it's going to, the AI is only as good as what we put in.
Correct. And it's constantly evolving. It's constantly learning, right? So they're always talking about you have to train the AI, and it's still learning. It's still learning your behaviors, your patterns, and
exactly.
Whatnot, right?
But I think what you experience is very common, and actually people are getting irritated by it because they just don't want to like stop with AI. It's too much.
Absolutely. And some of them, and I've seen this, like Live and Unplugged, they just resort to going to the branch in person, right?
Yeah.
Because they just can't solve it online. I know that the banks try to like push you to like, oh, just go online. You can do this all online and you can do it on your app. But if the app and the artificial intelligence just creates this extremely frustrating experience for the customer, they're going to default to, well, the old way of doing things.
100%. This is where I do think like proactive engagement across known challenges and training and the onboarding process. Like again, having that really good onboarding process is pretty critical. And then I think having a really strong infrastructure to support that with humans, it's that balance, right? So I 100% agree. I think that's really an interesting dynamic. We'll see how it changes over time.
Well, only time will tell. Only time will tell. Okay. Jessica, we get to the point in the conversation where we are talking about actionable tips, and you've given us plenty already. But if there's somebody out there that's listening to this conversation you and I are having and saying, you know what, we've got to like start leveraging video, right? So what are these 3 to 5 things that B2B marketers can do to leverage video for every part of the customer journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are many, but I'll pick a few just so we don't run out of time. One is, I think, compartmentalizing information into digestible chunks, like thinking about how you're going to communicate in those small format chunks we talked about, which I think is critical today more than ever, makes you more relevant, helps you get more ROI on the information you're delivering through video. I think, that's a critical piece of this success of video is thinking about the digestibility of it. The second is thinking about mapping your communication barriers out, like actually thinking before you tackle stuff. First of all, will help with the stakeholder issue, because if you're sensing a massive communication pain point, they probably are too. And I think tackling the most painful things first is critical, really being on top of those priorities of what's most painful in what priority rank order. I think understanding the video readiness of your team's pretty important, and also encouraging folks that anyone can really do it. And then having that kind of 3-pillar approach we talked about to getting any people who are not video ready on board with it, right? Like making sure that they get on board so that if you're going to get into the video game, you need people to be believers, even if it's just suspension of disbelief right now, because what you don't want to do is jump in and and everyone's too scared and doesn't necessarily want to do it, or they're actually not engaged. And then I think that the fourth thing is really probably one of the most important, which is thinking about where you can leverage what you already have. Like if you're going to go out and start investing in software to produce video content at scale, you need to make sure that you are not wasting the things you have, and that the tool you buy doesn't waste the things you have. Like you shouldn't have to create from scratch everything new. If you are a marketer, if you're a salesperson, you probably have built out, at least in your head, if not out in the world, some kind of content, some kind of imagery, some kind of branding, some kind of positioning, some kind of messaging around what your value proposition, what your differentiators are. And you need a tool that's going to help you co-pilot those things into content that can be scaled. And I think that's important to know where you can leverage those things, what things you have, understanding what's in your arsenal already.
Yeah.
And then when you get a tool, you can then like plug and play those things. And I think the last thing I would say is just like, you need to make sure as you're assessing a tool, if you're thinking about bringing in a tool, that the AI is the right formula we just talked about, right? That the AI is, if there's AI, that it's real. It's a real thing that's actually going to help you and that it's going to be co-piloting, because I do think there is that first topic we brought up, which is what's keeping people from video. If the co-pilot can actually help you get over the hurdle of feeling like it's too hard, it takes too long, it's too expensive, all those things, it takes too much genius, as Steven Spielberg, right? Like, I think if it can help you tackle those things, then you know it's a legitimate co-pilot and a legitimate AI functionality. And I think those are going to be important things to consider. Those are my 5. I could go on, but I'm not going to do that.
No. Those are some dynamite tips. And going back to your point, folks don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think it's a part of it is also resourcefulness. Like check your existing assets, your existing content, and see what can be leveraged there or even repurposed. There is some merit to repurposing content, right, in different formats.
100%.
But again, just for the benefit of the listeners, I'm just going to repeat what you said in terms of the actionable tips. So compartmentalization of information into digestible chunks, I think, was the first point. The second point was mapping your communications barriers out and tap into the most painful things first.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree with that more because I've done it. Understanding the video readiness of your teams, absolutely important. Leveraging what you already have in terms of existing assets and content. And finally, the assessment of technology per se, or determining whether AI is the right fit or the right formula for you to use.
100%. That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So we're going to get to I call this the soapbox question. So I'm going to ask you to like get up there, right? And on this topic of leveraging video, right? What is a status quo that you passionately disagree with and why?
The status quo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have one.
Okay.
I have one. This is very highly personal and highly soapboxy.
Let's hear it.
That's okay.
Yes.
So I started my career in marketing in B2C, business to consumer marketing. And I kind of referenced this earlier, but I'm going to go deep. I think it's important. And I transitioned into B2B, business to business marketing, mid-career. And I think there is a deeply held perspective by a lot of folks that they are separate animals, like completely different animals. You cannot transfer those skills. You do not have shared insights between those two, that they're basically different career paths. And that transitioning between both doesn't hold a lot of value, and that the implications of the learnings from both wouldn't apply across either field. I deeply, deeply disagree with this to my heart and soul. And it's not just because of my own personal experience. I think there is a ton of insight from B2C that's transferable to B2B and the other way around. I think the differences that most people sense are foundationally in language barriers, right? Different terminology used in B2C and B2B, but ultimately it's all B to H. It really is at the end of the day. And so, look, I think B2B marketing tends to focus on, because you're selling to committees, because you're selling to corporate personas, thinking about data-driven, data-enabled, data-measured tactics, and oftentimes are a little more squeamish about very above the funnel awareness building, brand generating things. I'm making assumptions here based on my experience. And then on the B2C side, I think B2C, feel much more that emotional purchase requires a lot of, or emotionally driven charged purchase of an individual requires a lot more consumer psychology, developed stuff at the above the funnel, awareness building. And they love to do more data driven things, but feel a lot of times that they have to focus so hard on that like brand awareness, brand loyalty stuff, visuals, all those things. I actually think that both of those things should merge. Like there is an emotional factor to a B2B decision. I don't care who says there is not. I completely disagree. I think when you are a human making a decision about something, your relationships with the company, your feeling that your problems are heard, your understanding of what you're going to buy and feeling like it's aspirational to what it's going to deliver versus what you're going to pay are all just as important as they are in B2C. And I think in B2C world, the need to have data driving the marketing motions, understanding customer feedback in meaningful ways, integrating that into new learnings is critical too. And I'm not saying everybody blanket is in those two categories of separation, but I think it validates how much marketers are more alike than they think, B2C and B2B land. And look, I think being really sharp in all those things makes great B2C marketers who operate like B2Bs and great B2Bs who operate like B2Cs and people who do both really well. And I think that's a really great unifying factor. We could all bring ourselves together more. Should we all be thinking like strategic B2H marketers? That's my soapbox.
Yeah, you weren't kidding. That is a soapbox moment. But
sorry.
No, but I mean, a lot of the things that you said, I mean, they totally resonated with me, and I do agree with that, right? I do know that there is a camp out there, and you probably know some of these people as well, that completely keep these two camps separate, right? That say absolutely not. B2B is a different beast. People should stop saying we should be influenced by B2C. Throw that playbook away. I mean, yeah. I don't agree with that. I mean, for me, it's similar to AI. It really depends on the situation, on the vertical, at which stage the company is at. But to completely dismiss that these two have certain aspects of characteristics that overlap, to completely dismiss that, I don't think that that's right. Right.
Yeah.
And there's living proof of that. And I know that some of these campaigns are data, but living proof that you can be creative in B2B. I mean, there's a couple of campaigns that ran many years ago. I'm just going to say there was one by GE, and it was a video series called Datalandia. If you've never heard of it,
I remember.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't that incredible? And
I think there are lots of these that really do think like the end human buying the stuff. Yep. So,
and that was
it's not a blanket, like it has to be true for every single thing. No. I agree with you. It's all specific to the case.
For sure. I mean, that one was on big data, right?
Yeah.
And then Cisco came up with a series a couple of years ago focusing on CISOs on the topic of cybersecurity. And they came up with a comic book series, right? About these superheroes that were, trying to rid the world of cyber threats, right? Right? Okay, granted that Cisco and GE also have very generous budgets, right? Okay, and that would.
But I think the micro tactic of that is just thinking about personalization as a tool to the individual buyer, and I think a lot of ABM softwares are thinking about this now as well. Like, how can I think about my unique buyer and their particular pain point? And that is a very traditionally B2C land to live in. Like, let me think about you, individual D2C buyer. But in B2B, we're starting to do that now. Like, think to the account-based, personalized company approach. And so that's where, it's not, I made it very dramatic for the soapbox, but I think it is ultimately about refining down what you're doing to personalize it enough that at the end of the day, the buyer feels like you're actually doing something for them.
Yeah. I mean, you made it dramatic, but rightly so. Rightly so. I think it's something that needs to be said. But okay. So I've got 2 more questions for you, Jessica, and then I'm going to let you go. All right. So here comes the bonus question. And what career advice would you give your younger self? And I'm not saying that you're not young. You are, but your younger self,
Trust me,
when you started
I'm
out in your career?
self-aware.
Yes.
My younger self, I think I would give myself the advice that I should not be afraid to approach risk with a measured lens. I think I was very risk averse as a young person. I was scared to try the new thing. I was scared to not do what I was told. I was
Yep.
scared, I'm a rule follower.
Yeah.
I'm like a
Yeah.
hard rule follower.
Yeah.
And I think it took me a really long time and a lot of people pushing me. And I'm grateful for those mentors and advocates who pushed me, but to get more risky. And I don't mean risky like doing crazy, like I don't know, a motorcycle, but I think like being sharp about when to try something that is a little scary and could fall flat on my face. I think I didn't learn until I hit startup land, really like the fast fail concept.
Yeah.
I wish I had that fast fail concept in my arsenal way earlier, because fast failing, if you set it up, like we're going to fast fail at like really inexpensively at these like 5 things, learn a ton and be so much better for it. And failure is where you learn the most. And so if you're not going to take risks, you're not going to fail, you're not going to learn and grow and do better. And as a marketer, it's critical. Like you cannot die hard on your sword of righteousness of the thing you're going to do right and spend $1 gajillion at it. And it's where this rapid iteration comes into play, being able to make videos on fast, right? Like really fast fail things. But I wish I had known earlier on in my career that I could safely fast fail. And I wish the technology had been there to support it more. But
Yeah.
I also, if I'd known it, I probably would have done a couple more courageous, earth-shattering things than I've done in my career. So
Like,
any advice to anyone I could give is that don't be afraid to fail.
Fantastic. You would have taken more leaps of faith, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Definitely.
I think that's something that resonates with a lot of us. I mean, myself included, I was exactly like that too. I was a Boy Scout down to the T, right? Like people pleaser, and we shouldn't do that. That might rattle a few cages. And then later on in my career, I realized, well, I think you need to rattle the cages to wake the animals up, right? Like,
and look at you now. I mean, amazing what you're up to. So, we all get there. We all get there eventually.
Absolutely. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your expertise and experience with the listeners. Quick intro to yourself and how folks out there can get in touch with you.
Sure. So I am a board member, a marketing executive. Best way to reach me is at my email. I know it's like super old school, or on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Jessica Deckinger. I'm also, my email is jessica@mintmarketing.group. You're welcome to reach me there if people want to reach out and have questions. But those 2 places are the best places to reach me. And I'm so grateful that you had me on today. Thank you so much, Christian. It was lovely speaking with you. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed a ton. So really, really grateful for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was an absolute pleasure. So thanks again, Jessica. Take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Christian.
Okay, bye for now.